How's it going, guys? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to the House of Fata Morgana, or Requiem for Innocence. We're in the Ascento delle side story, where we're kind of following, again, Michelle, Morgana, the witch, and a strange guest who is here, who's, like, dying of a strange, like, wasting disease. I'm gonna be honest right now, I've got a bit of an issue. Remember a few weeks ago I got really, really sick? Another round of plague is going through my house right now. I'm the only one currently who doesn't feel sick. And considering that I just cleaned up some vomit, I doubt it's gonna last. It's the nature of things, you know. People bring home sicknesses and, you know, you do your best. I've been washing my hands and doing everything I can to keep myself as mindful as possible, but I don't know. I live in this house and I'm the only one now that's not sick. It feels like it's inevitable at this point. So we might need to brace ourselves for another break, unfortunately. I think, again, it's just one of those things where, like, we were so cooped up for so long. I think we just haven't been exposed to stuff, and then we've just had a lot of exposure lately because we've been so much more active and doing more. So, yeah, I mean, it's what happens. Hopefully not. Hopefully I'll be okay. Like, maybe I'll just fight it off. You know, immune system might actually work in my favor this time. We'll see, but heads up just in case. You know, we'll see what happens. But we're going to be jumping back into this now. There's not really much else to say other than, like, how the two have started bonding a little bit and kind of see more eye to eye. And it's, again, it's like an echo, a hollow echo of what happened with Giselle in the future. So it's really interesting to see a lot of old emotions coming back. So let's jump into this because it seems like Morgana might actually start interfering at this point. So, oh boy, here we go. I got my water because I'm going to be doing lots of voice work here. So hopefully it's good enough. Anyway.
You aren't seriously going to make friends with him, are you? I thought you were better than that. Or do you think you'll get something out of this? Well, you're sorely mistaken. You've forgotten what you truly are, and gotten into your head you can be equals with him. Your heart brims with light, yet here you are, grasping at companionship, knowing full well it is but a fleeting illusion. What do you have to gain from forging a friendship with him? Already tired of me, are you, my dear? Very well, I shall take my leave. Despite what they may say, I'm a very kind-hearted girl. To those whose fates are sealed, that is. I pray you're blessed with wonderful dreams tonight.
That night I had a dream. Oh boy! Not a nightmare, nor a dream of the past. A warm, pleasant, slightly bittersweet dream. I hadn't had one like this in quite some time. An endless field stretched out before us. We pushed our way through the sea of waist-high grass, pressing outward toward the ever-distant horizon. A spring breeze whipped past, caressing my cheek. At my side stood a man beaming as bright as the sun. He had hair of deep scarlet, like the color of the setting sun. His eyes were unflinching, his lips showed a strong resolve. His chest was smooth and muscular, he had a musky scent. It was my first time seeing his face, but I knew exactly who he was. No, not much farther now, the man spoke. Our paradise is just up ahead. His lip curled up. It was a smile that might look condescending on another face, but on his it seemed perfectly natural, not a trace of disdain. In fact, anything but a cocky smirk would have seemed out of place, which made reality that much more bitter. Here on the other side of the sea of this beautiful land, no one will think less of us for anything. If someone happens to find out about you, no one's going to make a big deal about it. And no one's going to be afraid of my disease. I was well aware of the fact this was a dream, and I thought it rather a cruel one. Mion was right. I did love adventure stories, and I did want to go on one of my own. This was the very thing I'd wished for since I was a child. Two men sitting out together, free from obligations on a journey to see the world. Exploring the unknown, sharing that experience with a dear friend. But it could never happen. Not so long as I was who I was. And not so long as Mion was sick on the verge of death. It was a dream we could never make come true, no matter how badly we wanted it, no matter how hard we fought for it. It wasn't an entirely impossible dream, though. There was one part of it that could become reality. The two of us becoming friends. There was probably enough time before he died for me to get close enough to tell him how I really felt. That I just wanted a friend. That I wanted to be able to laugh and frown and get upset like an ordinary guy. Like him. There may be time, but that's not enough. I had spent too much of my life isolated. I had almost irreversibly adapted to this solitude. Breaking through that shell would be no easy task, especially not with my unspeakable secret hovering over me. The very fact of my nature, which had transformed me from the namesake of an angel into an abominable demon that didn't deserve to live. Something I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't let anyone find out. Which meant that a normal friendship was impossible for me to form. And I knew that far too well. That night I had a dream. Not a nightmare, not a dream of the past. A warm, pleasant, slightly bittersweet dream. I hadn't had one like that in quite some time. An endless field stretched out before us. We pushed our way through the sea of waist-high grass, pressing onward toward the ever-distant horizon. A spring breeze swept past, caressing my cheek. At my side stood a man with a somewhat forlorn look on his face. He had long silver hair that fluttered in the wind. A darkness was visible beneath the pale red of his eyes, and his lips were furrowed into a half-scowl. He was tall enough that I had to look up at him. The man furrowed his brow as if to scorn the shining sun for daring to be brighter than the candlelight he was so used to. It was my first time getting a good look at him. I might have gotten some of the small details wrong, but he was still very distinctly like the Michelle I knew. I pointed toward the horizon and said, "That's where our paradise awaits." He didn't seem to believe we had actually found anything, but still he joined me on my endless journey with nary a complaint. So all it takes is bringing him into my dreams to drag the cynicism out of him, huh? I thought. Then, with a laugh, I said, "We'd make pretty good friends, don't you think?" His eyes swam for a few moments before he finally muttered a response. "Many years ago, I dreamed of having something like that." "You gotta be a little more specific." "Like my two brothers." "Keep going." "Someone I could share anything with, and could do the same with me. Someone who understood me without need of words." The classic image of a friend. Two guys who've always got each other's backs. Michel crossed his arms and turned his head away. He might have even blushed. I couldn't see for sure. I had mixed feelings, though mostly I was glad to hear he felt that way, and I wanted to make that dream come true. "Well, it'll be just like that. You'll see, buddy." Another breath of the wind blew past. I was pretty sure I was smiling. The way I always did, the way I always pretended to. My self-confident, utterly voracious smirk. If we really got to know each other, there was no way we'd ever be friends. True friendship was impossible to achieve between us, and I knew that far too well. Interesting. So he's got skeletons in his closet too. I woke in the darkness, in a house where the time of day held no meaning. The same sight always awaited me every morning. Before I had grown fully accustomed to the world without light, the uncertainty of it had occasionally morphed into fear. My instincts reacting, I presumed. Danger was harder to perceive in the dark, after all. But once I'd gotten used to it, the darkness felt almost compassionate with its indiscriminate embrace. And now, I was more stable than here than I was in the light. This morning was an unusually pleasant one, though. All my problems were still problems, my curses still curses, but it felt like I'd managed to break the surface and catch my breath for the first time in who knew how many years. Perhaps I could thank the dream I'd had. Oh, that was loud. I rolled out of bed, grabbing the candlestick off my nightstand. With the remnants of the mostly melted old one, I lit a new candle and headed for the door. Next on my list was the fireplace. I tried to make sure there was always at least a small flame in it. But as soon as I stepped out into the hall... "What are you doing there?" I found myself face to face with Leon. Although that wasn't an entirely accurate description, as he was slouched against the wall across from my door. "Morning, Rachel." I couldn't help but cringe at the sight of him, still insisting on keeping up his everything's alright act. "What are you doing?"
Seems pretty obvious to me.
Well, it isn't to me. You're clearly in no condition to be walking around.
It's come.
What has?
My time.
The light from the candle fluttered about, slightly offset by the trembling of my bony hand. But Imion, he was visibly shaking, enough that I could probably have seen it even in the dim candlelight. Not out of fear or cold, but simply pathological reaction to his condition. His breath sounded like puffs of wind, the whoosh of a bitter wind morning echoing in the hall. His arms and legs were so atrophied that if I didn't know better, I might think him a tall tree withering away in the fierce cold at first glance. My gaze slowly drifted downward, stopping at his splayed arms. Blotches of red were visible on the palms of his hands. Did you cough that up? I almost reflexively made to draw nearer, but he stopped me after only one step.
No, stay back. Don't touch me. You might catch it.
We've been living here together, breathing the same air. If we were going to catch it, I would have already. The fact I haven't shows that it's not an infectious disease.
Maybe, maybe not. But either way, you shouldn't touch the blood. You know, as well as I do, that blood is unclean. It carries everything in our bodies, even diseases. You may be able to catch it from the blood, even if you didn't from anything else.
He's actually very right. A lot of diseases, especially dead ones, aren't airborne. If they were airborne, they would be too easy to catch and would spread like wildfire across everywhere. Heck, even like some of the biggest plagues, like the bubonic plague, wasn't really a aerosol one, though it was a bodily fluid transfer one, which does mean that touching infected blood would mean that you'd be more likely to get infected.
So I figured I'd drop on by, say my goodbyes.
Say your... I stopped myself before finishing the sentence, realizing just how foolish it would make me sound. I was the one who told him to leave when he knew this time was up. But that was back then. That was just how I felt when he first showed up.
If I'm really lucky, I have maybe a couple days left. I've been hiding it, but it's been hard to even stand these last few days.
And you did a terrible job of it. Although, I didn't realize you were in quite such bad shape.
Well, I guess it's getting past sore on my acting then.
How can you laugh about this?
I'm in a great mood.
That's ridiculous. You can't be. Just drop the act already.
It's not an act, bud. I'm serious. I'm feeling great. I had a fantastic time. And what better way to show that than with a nice laugh?
Looking down at this man laughing as death crept closer, I didn't feel pity or sorrow or anguish. I was angry. My chest clenched and my stomach lurched. Ah, how aggravating. There was something else here too, some other way I could describe it, but I didn't know what the feeling was. I couldn't draw it to the surface. It was aggravating, frustrating, sickening. Those simple negative emotions were what I kept falling back to. I wanted to block it all out. Imion's deteriorating body, that comforting dream, my own circumstances, this dark mansion, this whole world.
I had an amazing time here with you. Seriously.
Stop it. You're just getting sentimental, letting your emotion cloud your memory. I've done nothing for you. Think about your time before you got sick. When you were with your friends and family. Think about the time you spent traveling. Then you'll realize how insignificant your time here really was.
It was all a lie.
What?
I was never a traveler. My name isn't even Imion. I never went to the Northlands, and I never saw the Danes. Even what I said about having a ton of friends, all lies. Here's the truth. I look like I came from the slums now, but I was born into a decently upper-class family. My father and brothers all owned several estates. I wasn't traveling when I got sick, but at home. And for a while, I was kept locked up to keep it under wraps.
Oh, dear. That's gonna hit close to freaking home. I spent my life doing everything asked of me for them. They turned on me the second I caught this damn disease. The servants I thought respected me, the brothers I thought loved me, they all wanted nothing to do with me anymore. And before long, they started saying it was punishment for my transgressions. That I was cursed to transform into a hideous monster because I deserved it. Fetch, man, this is the trouble of, like, not having science. Like, everyone just eventually falls back on curses, like, and religious justification, religious, like, destruction, religious, like, sword of Damocles. You know, this idea that, like, that the people who suffer deserve it some reason, because there's no other way to be able to move past and ignore the amount of suffering we see in the world sometimes. It's convenient to be able to just assume that whoever is suffering for some reason deserved it. Some choice they made, some action they took. Heck, there's even people who believe that things that people did before they were born dictated whether they had a good or a bad life, or had an easy or a hard time. And I think that it's a disgusting premise. It might make you feel good, and it might help maybe make a congregation feel good, that, like, oh, we're all great because we all made it in the right place. We're all doing the right thing, so obviously we're on the right path, and, like, we're chosen, we're special, we're unique. But the truth of the matter is that it's exclusionary. It's an us versus them. It's a way to try and make it so that you can distance yourself from people who are suffering, and make it so it's not your fault or your problem, or even that, like, that it's not your problem and thus can't be your fault. The poor, the needy, the sick, the infirm, the handicapped. It can sound great when you say things like being a good person leads you to have blessings, but the alternative is really a dark, evil statement. That by not being a good person, you somehow are given what your just desserts are. And that spits in the face of all the good people who have terrible things happen to them. And all the terrible things that are done by people being bad people. Not some god who's just arbitrarily deciding that some of his children he hates, wants to suffer. That doesn't work at all. That doesn't mesh at all with the way things should be if you really choose to be religious, if you are genuinely religious and genuinely believe. Like, how can you say that the bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people? Because there's so many examples of the opposite. I think in a world like ours, you can't look at it like a exchange service. You can't try and justify this idea that by being a certain way, that certain good things are going to happen to you and your family. Instead, the truly good people, the truly saintly people, the people who truly deserve to be notarized and upheld and honored and treasured, are people who are good in spite of the challenges they face. Those who give even when they don't have much to give because they want to. Those who make time for people who don't ever seem to get time. For people who do their best and work hard. Not for any value or reward, but because it's what they want to do. We should reward people who work hard. We should reward people for doing good. But you can't monetize goodness. It might be a good place to start. It might be a place for a foundation, but it's not making someone genuine. It's not what makes people truly spectacular. The greatest people in the history, the greatest people of all time, irrevocably have been those who were good because they wanted to be, and for no other reason. Because they found fulfillment in helping others. Because they found peace and joy despite the challenges they faced. And so keep in mind that it's toxic to assume or to try and lay at the feet of a god that pain and suffering happen only to those whom somehow have earned that right. And it might sound easy to process, and it might sound obvious when I say it, but the thing is that this is a way of thinking that I still find myself falling into time and time again. It's an automatic pattern to look away from people who need help, who are suffering, to want to push the burden of those in need onto other people, or assume that it's somebody else's problem to take care of, or that there are going to be netfalls and situations that are guaranteed that those people have the opportunities they need. To even start to think that people who don't have jobs, or people who don't have homes, or people who don't have families are somehow choosing that they just don't want that in their life. That there's going to be some kind of system that they're going to rely on, and that there's no joy to be had in having fulfillment and self-drive and self-determination. These are dangerous precedences, dangerous thoughts to have, because they start to turn people into demons, into monsters, into things that we can't be compassionate toward because they're not like us. And that's the first step towards criminalization, towards violence, towards segregation. It's the excuses. So yeah, it's a human problem. It's a human tendency. And it was a huge problem back in the day because it was the only thing people could turn to find any kind of meaning to their actions and to their feelings. But our excuses have grown very, very slim because we know better now. So, next time, I encourage you to think about the way you approach people who are downtrodden, the way you think about them when you see them. Something that me and my wife have been working very hard to change. And we've actually started working very closely, especially my wife, with the local homeless population. Instead of just donating to charities, we've been going out and talking to them, trying to help them find and fill the needs that they have rather than the general needs we assume. And it's been a very uncomfortable but powerful experience. So, whatever you're comfortable with, I'd recommend you do something similar. Take the mask off of the people whom we tend to set aside and take a hard look at really what's going on there and be the force of good rather than just hope that somebody will take care of the problems. Real swell family, huh? The disease hadn't progressed this far then either. So I still looked, well, half decent at least. A pretty darn good looking guy if I do say so myself. So I used that to manipulate one of the maidservants into helping me escape. And that's how my life as a nomad really began. So while I was something of a traveler, I was carrying some pretty big luggage along with me. Everywhere I went, I was treated like garbage. The Imion you met, brimming with self-confidence, was all an act. I'm sorry for lying to you. Why?
Why'd I pretend to be someone I'm not? Because...
No, I don't care about that. Why didn't you say something sooner? In Mion's story, his life was painfully similar to my own. I'd been called a demon, mocked and insulted, made out to be a madman, then locked away where no one could see me. Everyone I'd thought to be on my side turned against me. You should have told me. Cracks began to form in the thick shell I'd spent so long building around myself. Sharp claws dug their way through the flesh of my heart, which I had thought long since numb. Thick blood seeped from within me. It was absurd. If anyone here was hurting, it was in Mion. If I had known, if I had known, I could have done so. Could I have done something? Was that where I was going with this? That I could have told him about my past and we could have bonded over our suffering? No, that wasn't how it would have gone. If Mion had told me what he had been through right off, I would have seen so much of myself in him that I'd have likely detested him for it. I would have wanted to get to know him better. I wouldn't have wanted to ever see him. I suspect pretty early on that he'd been through something similar. That you weren't here of your own will. And from your mannerisms, that you came from a noble family. Which is why I don't want to say anything. I didn't want you to think that was why I was here. I didn't stay because we both led tragic lives. That's not why I found it so comfortable here. Everything about how I presented to you was a facade.
which is precisely why I was able to be myself. I can't tell you how wonderful it felt for you to accept me for me.
I didn't.
You didn't have to do anything. That was enough to set me free.
I could feel sweat trailing down the back of my neck. I couldn't follow along, couldn't make any sense of what he was saying. My heart was wavering, but I couldn't put any of it into words. What were you supposed to say to that? I hadn't the first idea. And with the way I'd lived my life, the way I'd closed myself off, I never would know.
So I wanted to thank you. Goodbye, Michel.
Emilion let out a long sigh, like his nerves had loosened all at once now that he had said his piece. He then climbed to his feet, using the wall for support, let out a couple muffled coughs, and started off down the hall, leaving me behind. Wait, Emilion! The shackles around my spirit were on the verge of coming off. Everything I'd worked so hard to bury was bubbling to the surface. The man I'd killed in order to survive in this empty darkness was being infused with life anew. I was opening myself up. Wait, I lied too. Or, I mean, what I said then isn't true now. I don't want you to leave anymore. I don't care if you've only got a few days left. You'll last longer here than you will out there.
So, what? You gonna try to take me in and nurse me?
Exactly. Emilion.
It's darn tempting, but no thanks.
Why?
I'm sorry.
Why? The first person I'd ever met who I could possibly call an equal, a friend, was trying to withdraw from my life. Forever. Something inside me cracked, and something inside me formed anew.
Morgana!
Morgana! Morgana! I know you're listening.
Michel.
Cure him, please!
That's enough, Michel.
The witch isn't just a legend. She doesn't have a physical form, but she lives here in the mansion, and she's somewhere nearby, watching everything.
Really? It's okay.
Believe me.
I do believe you.
Emilion.
It's okay. Thank you.
Why are you so insistent on leaving? Didn't you want to talk to the witch?
I just think now's the best time to call it quits.
But why?
I do feel bad about this, for what it's worth. And I'm seriously grateful to you, too.
That doesn't tell me why.
Sorry. Ugh. I want you to take what you're feeling right now and keep it with you.
You... what?
Seeing the person in yourself will help you see the person in someone else when you next have that chance. Whoever that is, you take him by the hand and get out of here. Go somewhere you both want to be. You may not find paradise, but you'll have a life.
What on earth are you talking about?
Alright, I'm now seriously on my last legs. Can't even fake that I'm okay anymore.
Emilion.
So long.
Wait.
Michel. I think we made pretty good friends. Don't you?
And with that, he marched off down the dark hallway. It was almost unbelievable how sure-footed he seemed compared to only a few moments earlier, and then I realized that it was his final show of self-confidence. I could have easily caught up to him, but my feet seemed to be rooted to the ground. Maybe because I knew that even if I stopped him, it wouldn't stop me from losing him. Because anything I did would amount to nothing. I slowly dropped to my knees. The candlestick spilled out of my hand, the flame flickering out, a heavy darkness draping the hallway. I covered my face and let out a sharp, bitter groan. He had lived here less than a month. We barely knew each other well enough to call each other's acquaintances, never mind friends. There was no reason for me to be feeling this emptiness. But telling myself that didn't make the pain go away. The pain of having someone dear snatched away from you. A pain I'd never ever wanted to have to experience again. I thought I could hear the witch cackling, whispering that opening myself up only made me vulnerable. that bringing the dying man to the house was only ever going to leave me feeling all the more lonely. That I always belonged in the darkness, not light. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. He left the bar off. I barely got enough in me to push the door open.
Is that really how you want to do this?
There she is. There she is. Oh, it's you. Hang on, my throat. Wow, calling me surprised. I figured you'd be with Michelle.
I'm here to see you off for him.
You mean you decided to get more entertainment out of me? A girl with long braided hair stood before me, a smile spread across her lips. Her form was vague, almost a silhouette, if I could make out any details, but I still knew exactly who she was. This wasn't my first encounter with the witch, after all. I'd been able to see her and hear her voice since shortly after arriving at the mansion. When I told Michelle I believed she existed, I wasn't just saying it, I knew.
You're quite the seasoned liar. Making out like you're coming clean, and then replacing one set of lies with another. You can still go back and make it right. Telling the truth and you'll have my wish. Think about it, my dear.
A few days after taking up lodging at the mansion, the witch appeared before me. She spoke in a pretty but almost childlike voice, explaining how unusual it was I could see her, because evidently,
no one with a trace of hope in their heart is capable of seeing me. They can't hear my voice or even sense my presence. The despair that courses through Michelle is what serves as the catalyst for my resurrection. You're not here to be healed. You want to put a curse on someone, don't you?
that's right.
Your eyes don't lie.
I'm honestly kind of floored right now. First, the Witch of Legend is real. And second, she's not even human.
A mortal could neither cause miracles nor cast curses.
Fair enough. So, how'd you know I got what I really wanted?
It was obvious, my dear. All that murky filth swirling beneath your smiling visage. It's like a window directly into your soul.
Sounds like there's no hiding anything from you, so I can just drop the act, huh? Tell me you at least can hear everything I'm thinking.
And what if I can?
I would appreciate a little bit of privacy.
Fear not, my dear. I don't have the ability to read your mind, no. But you should know that the world you are living is, and the world as you're living see it, as the world you and I see it, are very different things. Emotions such as you seething animosity and desire to curse, as well as the fragments of your memory, are all laid bare to me. I normally wouldn't bother sparing anyone a moment of my time. I have a mission to accomplish, and I would like Michelle to accompany me on the long journey to its completion, so I don't have time to distract myself with anything else. If you were indeed nothing but a needlessly optimistic fool come in search of miracles, I would have done everything in my power to chase you out.
So I can assume the fact that I'm still here means you've taken at least something of an interest in me, then?
Indeed, but you were broken enough to come seeking me.
Then I'll get straight to the point. I want you to curse my family. Every last one of the damn Castaniggers. That ain't my final wish. The last thing I want from this life. I gave my whole life for my family. Sacrificed everything. And they repay me with desertion. Hell, making me into a demon. I'm here, sick and miserable, and no one gives a butt. They needed to experience the living hell I had to endure. I can't go in peace until they have.
It would be my pleasure.
Oh, wait, seriously?
What? Do you not believe me?
No, I just didn't think it would be that easy.
On one condition, though. I will offer my sincerest wishes to your family's utter devastation, so long as you offer me something in return.
Now that sounds more like the witch I was expecting. So what do you want from me? My life? A sack of gold? My resources are a bit limited, but let's hear it.
Michelle's spirit.
Excuse me.
I told you I want Michelle to accompany me on my journey, but too much of his worldly concerns remain for him to be of any use to me right now. He still reeks his mind over trifling drivel.
That still unfazed Michelle? He has actual worries.
It's all an act. For now, that is. If you want to crush his spirit, transform him into something more fitting for my purpose. And then I will make your wish mine.
That sweet voice makes what you're asking all the more frightening. So how do I go about it?
Start by using your head, my dear.
It was worth a shot.
That said, I will give you a hint. You have at your disposal everything you need to become exactly what he desires most.
Oh, I kind of hate this. It didn't take long around Michelle to figure out what the witch meant. There was one thing he very clearly sought, and it was something I was presently capable of making myself into. I had everything one would need to slip through the cracks in the wall around his heart. I was on the verge of death. I didn't know a thing about him or his personal life. And I was a man. Michelle seemed to have trust issues when it came to women. He had no interest in a lover or romantic partner. But a peer? A male friend? I guessed Michelle had probably been subject to countless betrayals over the years. His mother, father, siblings, loved ones. But probably never at the hands of a friend. I doubted he'd even had a real friend before. So Morgana's proposal was, for me to become his friend, and then betray him.
There's still time for you to go back in there and reveal everything. To see your wish to fruition. You could even ask for a miracle instead of a curse. To rid what ails you.
Don't bother. I'm not interested in any of that anymore. I'm just gonna go back out into the forest and die. So nope, you won't get me to go back there.
I don't understand. What on earth brought you to this decision?
I stopped caring about getting back at my family. That hatred was what kept me going for so long. It was what had driven me to wander in search of the cursed mansion. I had, in service of it, feigned getting friendly with Michelle, until at some point it stopped being fake. I had found something more valuable than petty vengeance, and I wanted to live the rest of my life, and then die, for that. With a bit more time, maybe I could have even told him, until he'd pulled me up from such a dark place. And then, with my power, I'd like to have done the same for him. But that was a dream beyond my reach. He would have to remain in darkness for a while yet.
I can understand losing interest in cursing them, but you're ignoring the other part of my offer. That I could wish for a miracle. Perhaps you don't believe a cursed witch can perform miracles? But you would be mistaken, my dear. In life, do you know what I was called? A saint.
Well, your saint was one heck of a mean streak.
My, now that was hardly called for.
I'll pass on your miracle too. Can't imagine it comes free of charge when the curse had a price. You want me to go in, tell him everything, right?
What do you have to lose? What possible reason could there be for you to hesitate?
That should be obvious, even to you. I want him to think of me as a friend. That is what he wanted after all. A peer, a male friend. So if I'm gonna go, I want to go out as that.
You would give up your chance at life for something so utterly meaningless.
I don't care how stupid you think it is. I didn't have time to be pulling him out of his dark place. But if at least he remembered me as a friend, if that had some positive effect on him, however insignificant, I much preferred that to anything the witch was proposing. Just don't you go blabbing once I'm gone.
I can't make any promises, my dear.
You say a word to him, and I'll curse you.
My heavens, are you picking a fight with a witch? Do you honestly believe you can curse me?
I bet I can. I could well turn into a witch just like you once I'm dead.
You very well could. You have all the makings of a fine witch. But you can rest easy, my dear. I won't be saying anything to him about you, because you're too inconsequential to be worth mentioning again.
I beg your pardon?
At the end of it all, the only one Michel truly needs is me. What he wants is a curse, and I'm the one who can provide it. You pretend to be his friend for a few weeks, but in a year's time that memory will have eroded away into nothing. Your death will amount to nothing. All you did was cast a light on his isolation, and sooner or later, I'll transform him into an inhuman spirit who lives only to spread curses like myself.
Now, that I could say you're wrong about. There's more care and understanding in him than you realize. He hides it, but it's there. Don't fool yourself. The whole world isn't going to bend to your whims, Morgana. There was nothing left for me that I could do. I couldn't leave any more of a mark on him, nor could I free him from her grip. But someday, someone would appear. A man, woman, friend, lover, it didn't matter. Someone would enter his life, take him by the hand, and lead him out of this cursed mansion. Someone would drag him out of his darkness.
Well, you turned out to be quite a disappointment. Everything I once saw in your eyes has been purified away into nothingness. Mark my words, all your hopes will be in vain. And you can watch from the afterlife, helpless as everything I said comes to pass.
And I'll be praying from the pearly gates that you're wrong.
Well, this is where we part ways then.
Hang on. That's an interesting stance that she's got.
Farewell, Noemi, until our souls cross paths once more in the boundless fear of fate.
Looks like this is as far as I go. Can't see a darn thing anymore. But hey, could be worse. I feel like I've been set free. Like all my shackles have been loosed. I found one thing to appreciate about this disease. It gave me one chance in my life to be myself. Hey, Michel. We're not that different after all. You were my first friend, too. My real name was Naomi Stagner. Noemi Castanier. Imion, the name I went by, was just my first name spelled backwards, but the truth be told, I was pretty fond of it. Anything else I might have come up with would have probably given away my gender straight off. I was just about to say, like, is it implying that he's a she? And it is. Gosh darn it. Nearly everything I told Michel was a lie. From claiming I was the guy to the story of my escape. I hadn't used my good looks or to trick a maidservant into helping, but instead manipulated a manservant. But looking back on it now, it was all over. Felt like the fake me, in Mion, was more me than the real thing. I'd always felt constricted my whole life. Nothing but barriers from the day I was born. I loved playing music, writing stories, running, riding a horse, swinging a sword, anything that gave me some sort of freedom. But I was only allowed until I was about 10 years old, at which point my life became training and everything I needed to be married off to some nobleman. I still remember those days vividly. Sitting stone still, staring at the window while I had my portrait painted, I caught sight of a large bird taking off to fly north, watching it flap its heavy wings. I fantasized about riding that bird off somewhere far away, to a beautiful, boundless, lush land no one had ever seen before. I would find my own nation, and it would be a first citizen. It would be a land without unfair rules and customs. A land where everyone was equal. Man, woman, old, young, old, a smile on everyone's face. And you would be free to choose who you spent your life with. There would be no nobility, there would be no slaves. And in this land, I would finally be able to find my true self. Liddy.
Michelle? Michelle? Oh goodness, what are you doing in here? Oh, Mom. Mother. Still looking at that painting, are you? Yes, there's something about it. You agree with me, don't you? It's a wonderful proposition, but your father never seemed to want to listen to me. We'll have to return the painting to the Castagniers.
Oh, interesting.
And after they went through all the trouble. Indeed. But all that aside, it's time for supper, Michelle. We're celebrating Dieter's return tonight, so don't you dawdle. You need to be there to show him how much you love him. Yes, Mother. I will be right down. Don't keep us waiting. It's been bothering me. Why I couldn't take my eyes off the painting of a Castagnier girl. But I think I figured it out. That forlorn look in her eyes.
There was more than resignation in those eyes. A trace of longing lurked within them as well. She was looking out a faraway world, distant not only in physical location from our own, but in a time as well. A boundless dream dwelt in her heart. I found myself slipping in her place, fantasizing about the same distant land. A place where I was allowed to be myself. And if by some chance I was able to make it there.
Would I find you there? Noemi?
Dang. It really would have shattered him.
I think we made pretty good friends, don't you?
Those were his last words before disappearing in the darkness. Their time together was brief, and they knew nearly nothing of each other. So could they in fact be friends at all? Could you be friends with someone so nearly a stranger? You don't know where they came from, or who they truly were beneath the surface. Had they known, though? Were they aware of each other's inner selves? Neither would they have been able to become friends at all.
We made pretty good friends.
I think they could have. It was precisely because the two knew nothing that they were able to know one another. Interesting. It's a good question. This one's gonna get me. I'm gonna be thinking about that for a while now, actually. It asks some really interesting questions at the end. Can you be friends with somebody without knowing who they are? And are there people whom, if you know who they are, you could never be friends with? Maybe. I don't think that's all entirely true. There may be people whom, if you know everything about them and their backstory, you might not be willing to be their friend. But not that you couldn't be their friend, you know? God, that's interesting. That's... Oh, like any good story. It's not an easy answer there, is it? Fetch. Alright, well, we're not done yet, obviously. We still have more. So, Tales Wasted Away in Obscurities next, and Happily Ever After to round it off, and then we'll be finished with the House of Fata Morgana. So make sure to keep coming back. We got a few more weeks of this for sure. But yeah, that was powerful. That was a good one. Like I said, it's hard for me to even articulate how I feel about it right now. I'm going to have to think about it. We'll probably cover it more deeply on our wrap party when we finish this title off and are ready to move on to the next one. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts about that story, especially now that we finished it. Several of you mentioned in some of the comments that this was your favorite part of the entire House of Fata Morgana Requiem for Innocence. I can kind of see why. I think while the Jacopo story with Morgana's past, like, brought out more detail, was fascinating, powerful, and moving, that really took back kind of the same thing that heralded. It had a lot more elements that heralded back to what the original book, the original story of House of Fata Morgana did, which was made you ask a lot of questions that didn't have any answers, right? And there's something powerful about that. So I really appreciate that we were able to do that. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the channel through watching it. Leaving your comments and likes also helps a lot. Thank you especially to the patrons. You guys are like literally providing the means for me to continue to like move forward with the channel, to try and seek like increasing the amount of content I've been making lately is a big part of that. So thank you for that. Make sure to send them lots of love too. If you're not a patron, like still just help them know how much we appreciate them and like the difference they make for the channel. And thank you all for just being here. You guys are part of a fantastic community. I don't know what I'd do without you. Thank you. Until next video, watching me up, see me next. I'll see you there.